Well, good morning. Last week, I stood on a train platform in Eastern Europe and watched as communist spies pulled a young boy and his father off of a moving train. They had been taking a trip from Western Europe to Eastern Europe. They had gone over to Romania, where they got some illegal items. They stuffed it into their luggage, and they brought it east into what is now Ukraine. Inside their luggage was a weapon that could end the communist view on things and really bring down the Iron Curtain. That weapon, of course, was the Bible. And although I was not able to get into a time machine and actually go back there and see it happen firsthand in the 1970s, this is what we shot last week on our film set in Romania, where we were recreating the story that we're calling 11 to 1 billion, that is the true story of that young boy who was captured, who was pulled off the train by KGB spies and brought in for questioning. That young boy went on to learn how to be able to copy the gospel 11 pages at a time, because that was the most that could fit into a typewriter, keystroke by keystroke, translating the gospel in books like Steps to Christ to be able to share with the communist people in the Soviet Union. Today, he has grown up to become the president of Hope Channel International, where instead of reaching 11 people at a time with pages, he's reaching 1 billion people through modern media. Well, my name is Kevin Christenson. I get to serve as the head of Hope Studios, which is the cinematic brand of Hope Channel International, and I get to work on projects like this. This is my job, but this is also my ministry. We are a ministry of the General Conference, and we get to tell stories that inspire people for hope. Well, before I get too far into my journey, and also if you ever want to connect with me, that's my Instagram there. That's one of the best ways to follow along with what I'm doing, or if you want to DM me there. My story is a little unique in that after graduating from Southern Adventist University, I went and worked in the film industry. I went and worked on projects for Netflix, NBC Universal, ABC, Hulu, had an office for a little while at Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta, before coming to work for Hope Channel International. But before I get too much into my story and our journey of how we got here, let's open with another word of prayer. God, I just want to pray that you would be with us, guide us as we follow in the paths of the pioneers led before us, that we would go and do likewise. Guide my words this morning and speak to the hearts of everyone here, that we would hear something that you are speaking, not that I am speaking. These things we ask in your name. Amen. Well, in 1940, a preacher by the name of Robert Boothby conducted one of the biggest crusades in Ohio, in Cincinnati. He rented out the 1,100-seat Emory Theater, and for 11 months, he conducted an evangelistic campaign there that led to 450 baptisms and an innumerable number of seeds planted. Now, in the audience were Raymond and Hertha McNeely, my great-grandparents. You see, my family joined the church through the theater. So my grandfather had just graduated 8th grade, and my great-grandparents, these new Adventists, they probably pronounced it Adventists, right, because they're new. They asked, so what do we do? We're now new to the faith, and we've got, our son here, so what's next? And they said, well, we recommend sending your son to an academy. So they sent him off to Mount Vernon Academy, which is a now closed academy in Ohio. And although he had gotten some orientation on the theological perspectives of Adventists, he didn't exactly get an orientation on the culture of Adventism. So when he was dared to get a tattoo on his hand by, his peers, he succumbed to it and had a beautiful tattoo on his arm. That was a no-no. And then when the weekend came around, he decided to go do what every kid did at that time, go see How the West Was Won, which led to the principal wants to see you. Okay? So he shows up. Mr. McNeely, what'd you do this weekend? Well, I went and saw a movie. In the theater? Well, where else? Naturally, these were too many strikes against him, and he was actually kicked out of the academy. Ironic. My family joined by walking into a theater, and then he was kicked out of the academy by walking into another theater. Well, despite being formally kicked out of the school system, he still wanted to be a part of that Adventist community of faith. So after formal training in music, he answered the call to go to New York City to be a part of a new program that was called Faith for Today. Now, I grew up hearing the stories of my grandfather's time in television and heard about how the Adventist Church had used talented musicians and actors and cinematographers to accomplish mission by using relevant storytelling to show Bible truths. They used quartet performances, scripted skits, and even professionally produced soap operas like this one that ran on ABC. It led to hundreds of thousands to study the Bible, and it was where the Adventist Church really pioneered media to actually become the first national religious telecast in America. We were the first. And as a kid, I was excited about this. I was inspired by this. The fact that we led on this was crazy to me because I was like, well, where are we at now? They closed the Adventist Media Center, and I was told that we don't really do that kind of narrative storytelling anymore. You see, we moved away from storytelling to knowledge talking. We developed all these postmodern methods that were, perfected during the 60s through the 80s, the postmodern era. But I don't know if you're aware of this, we have shifted out of the postmodern era. We are now in what we call the post-Christian era. And we developed all these postmodern methods, where we would bring truth, we would bring knowledge, we would kind of argue our way to truth. And it worked for a time, but you guys probably can understand, after COVID, how well does going and knocking on someone's door work? There's postmodern methods that were developed, and we're still using those in a post-Christian world. We became married to the method over the message. And so, when we come today and we say, here's truth, we're not met with argumentative responses like we were, prepared for. Now what do people do? They actually respect your difference. They respect, but they don't accept. Because they say, well, truth is relative. So with the old model, we were taught to start with the head, and you would reach the heart through the head. So we presented truth. We argued our way to truth. People were hungry for knowledge and information. So if we could just bring more knowledge and information than the next person, then we could win the argument, we could win over their heads, and by winning their heads, we would unlock their hearts. But now today, when we go and we say, here's truth, what do people say? Whose truth? Your truth? My truth? I respect your truth, and I'm really happy that you're living out your truth, and I'm living my truth, and we're all a big, happy family. So how do you present truth when truth is relative? Well, the Center for Secular and Postmodern Studies at the General Conference came up with a solution, and it's very simple. You flip the method. So instead of starting with the head to then unlock the heart, we now start with the heart to unlock the head. It's the difference between knowing versus believing. On the scientific side, it's the limbic system versus the prefrontal cortex. So you take them on a journey to truth. Instead of here is truth, let's go discover truth together. And in the battle of winning hearts and minds, we have to win the heart to unlock the mind. True faith isn't knowing, it's believing. It's that difference between knowing and believing. So how do you stir the heart to unlock the mind? Well, psychologists call it narrative transportation. It is where the story's fictional world radically alters the way that information is processed in our brains. We let our guards down. We experience what's called neural coupling, and our brains release oxytocin, cortisol, dopamine, which causes us to make an emotional connection and retain information. It's a lot of jargon to say we create empathy. So scientists did research where they presented stats and information just in an informational capacity, and then they quizzed people afterward. And they got like 20, 30-something% retention. Then they took that exact same information, presented it in a narrative capacity, and they had 70 to 80% retention. Same knowledge, same information, but presented through a different method. So you see, we don't just receive information, we experience empathy. And when we can empathize with a concept, we can empathize with a story, with a character, we can suddenly begin to have that understanding. So, that looks a little different today. And I love this quote from Andrew Peterson. It says, if you want people to know the truth, just tell them. But if you want people to love the truth, tell them a story. Now, as we look at modern methods, We're encouraged that some of the methods that are going to be used in this work will be different from the methods used in the past. But let no one, because of this, block the way by criticism. So, how do we innovate with narrative transportation? Today, that's through parables and what we call cinema evangelism. But I want to go back. What paved the way for this? Well, in the 1920s, people had said that the radio was of the devil and the airwaves were bad and you couldn't use that for good. And then George Vandeman challenged that very limited thinking, launching Voice of Prophecy in 1929, and reclaimed that technology for God, impacting hundreds of thousands to millions today. Okay, all right, so we can use radio. All right, that's fine. But then TV came. Oh, my. Oh, that's of the devil. It rots your brain. It's programming you. It's funny because, like I said, my mom grew up in New York City watching her dad on an Adventist program, and they didn't have a TV. The neighbors actually felt so bad for them, they pooled their resources and were like, here, have a TV so you can see your dad. But the perception at the time is, oh, TV's evil, and it's expensive. And then, two brave evangelists by the names of Elders William and Virginia Fagel launched Faith for Today, the first national religious telecast in America. But it was controversial. Keep in mind, they worked with imperfect sinners and rejects. They were not all fully vetted people that were working on this program. Oh no, they hired tattooed people who'd been kicked out of academy, like my grandfather. They even pulled violent gang members off the street, handed them a script and said, get on set. Plus, dramatic storytelling, let's not even get started. Just as a quick aside, the South American division actually did a trilogy of films about end times events recently, and they pulled in actors who were non-Adventist, probably not even Christian actors, because as you may know, there's not exactly a lot of Adventist acting schools to pull from. So anyway, they cast local actors there, and in the process they were asking, so is this based off a book, off a true story? I said, yeah, it's a book. So they gave them copies of The Great Controversy, and by the end of that, those actors were actually baptized. You see, our mission does not begin when the credits roll. Our mission doesn't begin when the project is totally perfect. If God was only going to work with perfect people, let's be honest, he would not have picked the 12 disciples. God calls us to start our ministry even in the process and who we're working with. So some of you may not go to work for the church. Some of you may go and work in other industries, maybe even other parts of the world that are not even open to Christianity. And that may be where God is calling you to be. And you can work with others in the process, showing them your faith through the process. Well, in 1952, the church nearly canceled Faith for Today. At the Autumn Council, they took a vote. And 148 out of 150 votes said, let's defund Faith for Today. It's expensive, it's just entertaining, it's not useful, it's inefficient, because the people voting on it, that wasn't their method. So if it doesn't work for me, it can't work for anybody else, right? Well, the Holy Spirit spoke through Elder Fagel that day as he shared stories of how God had used the airwaves to change the lives of many people that were watching. After his testimony, the council took another vote. The same overwhelming majority that had just voted against it voted to continue funding it. And because of that, 450,000 people went on to complete their Bible correspondence courses. Millions more heard the truth, and people like that violent gang member that I mentioned, Ron Halverson, he turned into one of the church's greatest evangelists, personally baptizing 11,000 people in North America and training another 4,000 lay members. Fun fact, the gentleman next to the Fagels, that was my grandfather. A wise woman reminded us that we have nothing to fear for the future, except as we shall forget the way the Lord has led us and his teaching in our past history. Do we actually learn from our history? Do we really pay attention to where the Lord has led us? And are we missing the lessons that he has taught us in the past and how that can be applied today? The Lord led our leaders in 1952, reminding them that no people or mediums of communication can limit his mission if only we ask. So, that brings us to today. Why return to a heritage of narrative storytelling? Why things like cinema evangelism? Well, it's actually not original. Jesus did this in the first century. He told stories. He reached the heart first before reaching the mind in many cases. And sometimes when he told stories, he didn't even explain them. There is examples where even his own disciples are going, Lord, I don't understand, and he doesn't explain. And he's basically like, you'll get it when you get it, and not a moment sooner. Well, at the National Religious Broadcasting Convention in 2020, where I first got connected with Hope Channel representatives, I saw this chart. I thought it was insightful, but it was also 2019 data, which, let's be honest, that's old now. So I looked for updated data to see what else I could find. Basically, all the trends stayed the same or they increased. 68% of churchgoers watched a Christian movie in 2024. Lifeway research shows that 81% of Americans agree that Christian movies are effective as evangelistic tools. And that's fine, but that's the US and that's Christians. So let's talk about the broader world. I mean, we're at Andrews University after all. This is one of the most diverse campuses in our whole denomination. So we can't just look here. Well, when we look at the global community, we find that 73% of people globally identify as spiritual, religious, or a person of faith. The majority of the people that you're talking to around the world are not atheists. They are people that have some kind of connection with spirituality, religion, something to that effect. And by the way, this study is not a Christian study. This was actually a secular study that was presented at a Variety magazine event for Hollywood. So this is not like religious bias skewed. This is real data that's talking about the global community. And when we look at how to best reach them, we see that the best way to reach them is where they are, through TV and movies. Well, when you compare what is being shown versus what people want shown, there's clearly a demand for more faith and religious content. You can see right there what is currently being presented, faith and religion, number 13 on the list. What is desired from the studies that they conducted, that bumps up to number 6. There is a drastic difference between the supply and the demand. So we've established that there's a hunger. How are we answering that call? Well, with my team at Hope Studios, one of the ways that we're doing this is through modern parable. We have a feature film called Slick that we partner with Southern Adventist University, where they're serving as the production company, we're serving as the studio, to do a modern adaptation of the parable from Matthew 13, where a man finds treasure in a field and sells all he has to get it. So this story follows a bank robber who is recently released from prison, and he's serving out his community service hours at a small church in the middle of nowhere where he overhears the parable being told. Now, misunderstanding the parable, he thinks, okay, this is about the man attaining the wealth, right? Attaining that treasure. I'm the man in the story. So when he's out in the field and digging a fence post, he discovers oil. And he realizes, I'm a man. I just found treasure in a field. So this is going to become my new heist. I'm going to force the church to sell the land not knowing what's under it. The film goes on to help him share his story of how he is understanding the real meaning of the parable, where he is the treasure in the field. Christ is the man who paid it all. It's not about greed. It's about accepting the grace that someone else paid for. I'll show you guys an early sneak peek trailer for it.
You gotta understand something about me. What I plan for, I get.
Jesus said that his kingdom is like the man working in the field. While he's clearing out the field, he ends up discovering this priceless treasure, and it's buried just underneath the surface.
Oil?
Everything's got a price, man. Name me one thing in this life that I can't buy and won't make me happy.
How about friends?
Wait!
The point is, Dylan, you are worth it!
You disgust me.
Out of the way!
It's never enough.
Well, in 2024, we released this film called The Hopeful. First time that we did this, we took original footage that had been shot a number of years back. Some of that was used for a mini-series that was called Tell the World. It was very long, and we found that it was struggling to connect with people that may not have already had familiarity with the characters and with the story. So we took that original footage, we added new scenes, new music, and we released the 90-minute feature film that's called The Hopeful. That was intended to be an introductory piece to the general community of who the early Advent people were. Now, this was the first movie from the Adventist Church to receive wide release in theaters. And we created support materials for it, like the Steps to Christ audiobook that was read by the same actress who performed. We also did Bible study guides. We had a whole cinema evangelism strategy kit, all of these kinds of things. And part of the reason for why we did this, a main reason for why we did this, is because we believe that media should not be a substitute for personal evangelism. So we've started to get into this very comfortable trend where we take media, whether that's books, whether that's videos, whether that's audio, and we give it to someone without any personal connection. And we start using that as the substitute for our personal evangelism. But the best way that you can connect with people, it's not through any item, through media. I know I'm a media guy, but media is not the best tool. The best tool is personal connection. So we want to use media as the tool to start that, to invite people to maybe sit down and watch a show together or go see a movie together and then have the discussion afterward in that setting where we can talk, personally on a one-on-one basis. Now, the film went on we opened in 900 cinemas across the U.S. It opened in Mexico back in October. It opened in 2024 in about a few hundred theaters across the South Pacific Division, where it actually ran for 7 weeks in cinemas there. The South Pacific Division estimated that 60% or more of tickets were actually non-church members who came to see it, and it rose to number 4 of new movies in Australia and number 2 of new movies in New Zealand. It won multiple awards, and it actually qualified for Best Picture at the Oscars. Now, why I was excited about that last piece of it is because when you qualify for anything within the voting categories of Golden Globes, Oscars, which it qualified for both, it means that when the 9,905 Academy members sit down to vote, they have their own private voting portal that they can watch things in, they were presented with the message of the hope that we share. Because just like Xerxes, Nebuchadnezzar, and Darius, we're not just called to reach everyday, ordinary people. We're also called to reach the elites. And so from the public theaters to the elites in their voting portals, we're called to reach everyone. Now, I don't know if we have sound up yet. This is all great in theory, but the question, of course, comes down to, does it actually work? Well, don't take my word for it. I want to share with you a testimony that actually came from one of our own right here in North America, Pastor Vinny McIsaac.
Dave randomly walked into the church one day after having watched the movie The Hopeful, and he's like, "Oh, you're the pastor?" And he started talking to me, and right away I noticed there was something different about Dave, and a real sort of humble spirit about him. Dave is an Indian man who disclosed that he's of a Hindu religious tradition, and what Dave told me was that he'd seen this movie, and he went to this movie because he recognized I think Ellen White's name off of one of the books someone had given him randomly someday. What he told me, makes sense from a Hindu background, if you think about it. And again, in the Hindu tradition, light is very important. He said, the same light that I saw resonating from the book that was given to me, I sensed from the preview. And so I went and I saw the movie, and it had that same light. And then Dave kind of leaned into me and said, "Can you explain to me what it is about the Adventist people that have that light that was coming from the book and from the movie?" And so we began to talk where Seventh-day Adventists came from, how they were different from other Christians, and what things they had in common with other Christians. And Dave's impression, I'll never forget it. His impression was, I know many Christians. I know about some things about the Christian faith, but I've never seen this light resonating from any group like this group. And Dave said, I've got another question for you if you have time. Why did a man have to die? Like, what is the importance of the crucifixion? Like, I don't get it from my background. Why someone had to die, and how does that make anyone better that this person died? I had a great experience just to be able to sit with Dave and explain the purpose of the cross and the sacrifice of Jesus, and this idea that justice and mercy kiss at the cross, and that really impacted Dave. And after that, the next Sabbath is when Dave started coming to church for worship. Sometimes struggles with his background, and sometimes he will message me during the week and ask me for prayer. I taught Dave, you don't need a pastor to pray for you. My role is not like a Hindu priest. You can pray in the name of Jesus yourself. And since I've taught David that, I don't think he's missed church.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
One day I did a baptism, and David was so excited to see a baptism. He'd never seen anything like that. He said, "Pastor, can I go up to the baptistry and see the baptistry myself?" And so I said, "Sure, Dave, let's go up and look at the baptistry." And so Dave came up, looked at the baptistry, and came down. I think a member asked him, "Dave, are you going to do that?" And Dave was like, I don't know, but I know that same light that I saw from the book, that same light that I saw from the movie, and the same light I see when you guys sing and when you guys preach, I saw when that person came up from the water. Is because of the movie, Dave cold called the church. It has become a part of our community, if not yet a member. But we can see what Jesus is doing. So, in addition to asking you to consider to do more movies in the theater, or even if we want to get bold on some of the streaming services, but that would reach people like Dave who don't have the Christian background, which I believe is going to be more and more common, I would ask you to pray for Dave as he's on a journey, and none of us know where that journey is going, but we can see, like it says in Revelation 14:4, Dave is one of those who is following the Lamb wherever the Lamb goes. So I would invite you to pray that the Lamb would lead Dave to the Vienna Baptistry.
We feel love. The love of Jesus. It lifts us up. It carries us forward. And it will guide us home.
I was made for you.
86 years ago, my great-grandparents walked into a theater and found hope. And I wouldn't be here if Pastor Boothby had not rented that space and done something unique at that time. I want to encourage all of you that you may have some inclination, some calling on your heart that maybe doesn't fit in the box. Maybe it's even something that your very good meaning community, your parents, your pastor, your advisor said, well, that doesn't really fit into the things that we normally know as mission and as evangelism. And that's okay. Because maybe God's asking you to be preaching where the box ain't reaching. So if you have that fire in your heart, where do you think that came from? Who do you think placed that there? Maybe you don't see the path in front of you, and that's okay. You don't need to know what's next. All you need to do is you just need to trust God. Take that calling that's placed in your heart, place it before the Lord, and ask Him to guide your steps with it. That may look like changing majors. That may look like changing countries. That may look like going into a totally different field that people say doesn't make any sense and you don't have any career path or future in it. But if God can turn a donkey into a pastor, there's nothing that can limit what He can do with your calling, and a calling that is unique to you. So I want to encourage you, if you have felt questions in your life of, can God use this path to do something for Him that maybe I haven't seen done before, and you're waiting for that permission, this is that permission. Put it before the Lord in prayer. Really dwell on these things. Fast, pray. Put that before Him and ask Him to show you the next steps with that. I'd encourage you to go and do likewise, to follow in the steps of those before us, not to stop where their footsteps ended, but to continue the path that they forged for us. Well, my name is Kevin Christenson. I serve as the head of Hope Studios. If you want to follow along with what we're doing, you can visit us at hopestudios.com and see the ministry that we do, cinema evangelism and missional storytelling. Thank you for your time this morning. God bless.